To say a few words about Governor Askew this evening, please join me in welcoming his wife, Donna Lou Askew.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight and see so many of your smiling, happy faces. Isn't this a wonderful evening? You notice that our illustrious, wonderful, great president of FSU and his charming wife have recently just departed. And that's because I talked with him before a little earlier, and I told him I wanted to use him as an example of something. And you know what he did? He came up here and stole my thunder. It's such a great pleasure to see so many of you here tonight. It's wonderful. And I feel like Reubin Askew is here among us. I can't remember quite feeling that way as much as I do tonight. And I've thought, because of this year, I felt more that way. It's been 5 years since he passed away. That maybe there was something wrong with me because I can't seem to get past him. But it's because I've been going through so many files of his. And I finally got, I think, most of the information that's supposed to go to the library done. But he kept everything in the world. He never threw anything away. And I've been told that's because he was brought up during the Depression. And it meant an awful lot to have the things that he had. And so anyway, I've still got them. But I'm working on it. I'm just a little slower than I used to be. But even though some of these things have been said, I feel so strongly myself. But first, before I do that, I do want to thank everyone for this lovely dinner tonight. It's always a nice affair, and especially tonight, our meal. All those have worked so hard to make this such a nice evening, and it always is. And we thank you again, and we thank all of you for being here. And for those of you who have taken the time from your very busy lives to make some remarks to share with us tonight. And for your families that are here, you've made very strong efforts to be here, and we do thank you and appreciate you and are very proud of you. Is there anything I've left off? And if I have, I give you permission to tell me. And I also want to thank you in advance for indulgence and letting me speak with you. And if I may be repeating things, but I want you to know this is a copy of the farewell address that Reubin Askew gave in 1979. Is that correct? In January? You can correct me too. And I do promise you I won't read the whole thing. And it is smaller than his other addresses at the end of each 4 years. But I think that as I look around and see you, I don't have to tell you that his was the first administration to be able to continue on for 4 more years prior to the elections in 1980, the end of 80. They were, governors were allowed to be a governor for not only 4 years, but 4 more years. And that also the legislature would meet not every other year, but every year for 60 days. He was in the legislature 4 years in the House and 8 years in the Senate. And I've always felt that was very important because he had the background and the knowledge of how Florida was growing and changing in those years. And I think that made a great deal of impression on him and how he was able to do a better job because of the experience he had in learning about Florida and its needs and her needs. And at the end of these remarks, and he had thanked everyone for giving me the opportunity to be in office, and he had welcomed the new governor of Florida to be. I want you to know that this was a very dark, gloomy day that this was occurring, and that it was raining, and it was a little windy, and it was very, very cold. And at the beginning of this affair, that little heater was on him and kept him warm. At the end of his remarks, that little heater had been changed. It was no longer keeping him warm, but it had been moved to another person. And that person was the new governor to come in, because they had to keep him warm. At the end, he says, little remains to be said, except perhaps a few reflections on public affairs that I would like to share with you as I depart. This means so very much to me because I feel it's so pertinent today and so important and pertinent always. First, the opening sentence of the Sunshine Amendment, which I proposed in 1975, states, "A public office is a public trust." The people of Florida agreed with that sentiment overwhelmingly and made it a permanent part of our state constitution. But those of us who have held public office know that it goes even deeper and further than that. Because from the earliest days of this republic, public service has been not only a trust, but quite often it has been a sacrifice. If we are to serve in the best traditions of our country, such sacrifice must be willingly accepted, and such trust steadfastly maintained. It is important, too, that the people appreciate such sacrifice and give support and encouragement to those keeping such trust. For a relationship of mutual understanding and trust is critical to an effective leadership. Second, the fundamental obligation of political leadership is to lead. It's not enough simply to respond to polls, opinion polls. So often the kind of leadership which is necessary requires that we not make the easy decision or the safe decision or the politically popular decision. And you've heard this before. So often the right decision, the one in the best interest of the people, is the hard decision or the one that involves great political risk. None of this is new to you, but it doesn't ever go old. And it needs to be remembered, it needs to be repeated, and we need to share it. And the thing that I'm bringing in a few little thoughts of my own, the thing that sometimes bothers me greatly today is I'm not sure that our children are learning these things in school. And if they don't learning them, they can't remember them. We can't remember what we haven't learned. It is the hard decision and one that involves political risk. And that risk, however, must be assumed because of the time in which we live. The times in which we live do not permit timidity of nerve among our leaders. And finally, we must always remember that we are all citizens of a nation that has a mission. And that mission is not the accumulation of material wealth, but the dispersion of a spiritual treasure. A treasure that says we are all one. Not just Americans, but all mankind. And all mankind is but a part of that thin shell of life that exists on the surface of a blue sphere, which rotates gracefully through darkest space around a small, bright star. Mankind has a stewardship to serve on this planet. We serve our God and our destiny by serving one another, not for glory, not for gain, but because our faith tells us that such service is part of our deepest reason for being. And I want to thank you, the people of Florida, for allowing me to serve you as governor for these 8 brief years and permitting me to fulfill part of my deepest reason for being. As I leave you today, let me offer as a farewell these words of an old Irish blessing. I've already told you the conditions of the day. And I know he had a hard time trying to decide whether to really say this or not. But he said it. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm. May God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you. And very much. They're beautiful words, aren't they? But they're so true. And he felt them so strongly. And he loved working with the students at FSU so much. It meant so much to him. But the last thing I wanted to tell you was, after those words, he turned around and walked over to me and took my hand. And we walked up the ramp and out and got in the car and went to the airport, got in the airplane, and went to Miami. And that was it. But, and this is important too, he never looked back. What he did the very best he knew. But he didn't look back. And we must remember that in our lives. We do the very best we know but it does not help to go back and go over it all the time. So do your best and don't look back. And thank you for all of